Hi, everyone, and welcome to another session here, AMA session here at Crypto Miners. My name is Jenny, your host, as usual, and today we will be talking with the team from Goracle. Honestly, I haven't seen a lot about Goracle all over Twitter, especially as I'm sure a lot of you have been seeing them too. So today we get to talk to the team. So if you're joining us for the first time on our Twitter session like this, do well to stay till the end of the AMA. And if you have any question that you would like to ask the team, we will try to take them when it's time for questions. All right. So yeah, prepare those questions. I can see that we have yes, the Goracle team here already. Um, okay, and if they're ready, we can begin.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having us.
Hello, welcome to today's session. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, sorry, I you cut out. I assume you were ask me to introduce myself or something.
No, 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 no. I was saying welcome. That is great to have you here with us.
Yeah. Thank you. It's great to be here. Crypto miners, you guys are always put on amazing Twitter spaces. So we're excited you guys chose us to be here.
Okay. All right. So let us I don't know, let's begin. Because Goracle has pretty interesting utilities, and it to take us, some time to cover all of them. And I'm really excited to get into it. So if you're ready, let's begin with maybe an introduction, of you, who's the speaker. We would like to know you and know your name, so I don't keep calling you Goracle. Uh, and then other members of the team, and then maybe like a little bit of background of the team and yourself, prior to the development of this project. That would be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Abdul Osman. I'm actually originally Canadian, but living in Europe now. And just a quick background about, first of all, what is Goracle? It's a decentralized blockchain oracle, and it basically gets data from off chain on chain, right? And in fact, I think you had an oracle on here yesterday. I was listening into that. So I think, whoever was here yesterday probably already knows a bit about that. My background is in computer science. I also studied business, and so kind of worked between software development and business management, project management. And then we kind of opened our own firm doing software development and mobile development. And one of the applications we were building was a decentralized sports bet tracking app. And this application needed a Oracle. So what we ended up doing was we built an Oracle for ourselves internally, and then we entered it into a hackathon. It ended up winning the hackathon, and we got a lot of messages about, "Hey, I need an Oracle too. Can you build one? Can we use your Oracle?" So we just ended up focusing on the Oracle because the demand for it was so great. That was back in fall 2021. A year and a half later, we're ready to go live.
That's interesting. You have a pretty robust career, but you're definitely not the only one that is part of the team. So could you maybe give us a very quick introduction of other part of the team, like the people who make up the Goracle team, apart from yourself?
Of course, yeah, we're not a tiny team. We're pretty small, but we're not tiny. So there's about 15 people overall. Um, so some of the people are from a finance background. Ali, our CFO, background in internal audit and risk. We have about 4 or 5 developers who have backgrounds in software engineering, cryptography, applied mathematics. We have people who are in marketing, right? Who have been studying masters in marketing, who have been managing many different communities, and who are well aware of how communities work. And just overall, we've got a pretty robust team of individuals. I can start naming them, but I think we'd be here all day. But yeah, it's about 14 or 15 people, and if you go to our Goracle website, you can actually see each one and click on their name and see their LinkedIn profile.
All right, thank you for that. Now, let us begin with, okay, rather, let me begin with this question. You mentioned that the need for Oracle was great, and so, Goracle was birthed. So, what are the key features and like functionalities, yes, of the Goracle project?
Yeah, so we don't just focus on crypto prices. We also have sports data, weather, and even custom data endpoints. And that's kind of what makes us an oracle. What makes us a next generation oracle is the ability to run computations on off chain and store data on chain. So this might sound a little boring for the people in the audience because it's more a business to business app, but just try to explain it really simply. Blockchains are limited. You can only do a small amount of things, or you can only store a small amount of data. If you wanted to do insurance applications, if you want to do sports betting, if you want to do, cross-chain gaming, you need a lot more storage and you need a lot more computational power. The Goracle network allows you to offload those resources, and basically, any application that needs a lot of data or a lot of computation can use us. So in that sense, we are almost like a layer three network.
Okay. Could you let me put it this way? Can you provide like a step by step guide on how to like integrate and use Goracle in a smart contract or maybe a DeFi application? I know that maybe the answers to these, as you said, might sound boring, but I feel like it's very, very important for a project of this magnitude. So if you could give us like a step-by-step guide, say on how to integrate and use Goracle in a smart contract or maybe a DeFi application.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say I'll give an example of an application. For example, let's look at sports betting, which is pretty common around the world. If you want to build that on chain, you can build the logic that says if you win, transfer this to this person, right? Um, but you still need who's going to play, what time they're going to play, and when they do play, you're going to need the scores. So the smart contract makes a call and says, "Hey, Goracle, get me this game's start time," and we get that contract. And then the contract says, "Hey, here's the game start times." Smart contract says, "Get me the odds," and we give it the odds. Or they say, "Get me the scores after the game," and we provide that information. So because we're giving the information now, the smart contract can use that information to build their own product and offer that to their end consumers. And so the end consumer is only interacting with this sports application, but in the back end, that sports application is using Goracle. If it's DeFi, maybe you're doing AI based machine learning trading bot, where if the price goes up, the bot buy or sells. If the price go down, the bot buys. So that's really hard to do on chain because one, you need some computation, and two, you need pricing data. So let's say somebody wants to build machine learning based trading bot, then they can use Goracle to execute those transactions and to also get it the pricing data. So those are two examples of applications that people would use that would use Goracle.
Thank you for that analogy. Um, not all of us are tech oriented or data oriented. So when we make projects like this, and and maybe go through the white paper or the technical paper, and it's all looking so crazy. It's looking like your brain hurts, from looking at those things, and you're wondering, like, I feel like this is gold and I want to invest, but I don't know what's going on here. So thank you. I think it's really amazing to meet somebody who's able to break it down in lay terms, for us to understand. So moving on to the next question. How does Goracle handle data aggregation and retrieval, from various external sources? As in, what mechanisms are in place to ensure data accuracy and reliability?
Yeah, sure. So what a lot of oracles right now do is the node runner or the operator is in charge of getting the data. Where they get the data from is generally up to them, or the oracle may decide, hey, we're going to use CoinMarketCap or something. What Goracle does is it actually separates the concerns. So if you're a node operator, you don't have to worry about getting data. All you have to do is start the software and let it run in the background. It's not your job as a node operator to get data. The node operator, the software is what retrieves the data. And so the actual data comes from institutional grade data providers. So these are data providers who themselves aggregate, let's say, the price of Bitcoin, for example. We have Amber Data, Kiteco, Brave New Coin, DXFeed. These are companies that themselves look at 50, 60, 100 data sources, bring them together, look at the volume, and they supply companies like CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko. And so, we let these data providers plug in directly to the node operators, and then the node operators are simply in charge of making sure the data gets on chain in a decentralized fashion. This has a couple of benefits. One benefit is that by not making the node operator have to worry about where they're getting the data from, we let them focus on what they do best, which is running nodes. And we've seen protocols where the node operator has to get the data. Maybe they all use the same free data source or something like that, and the quality of the data is not that high. Or the second benefit that has is, it allows data providers to monetize directly. So, in other ecosystems, the node operator buys a reseller license, the data provider only makes money from one node operator. But now the data provider can make money from any number of applications using the Goracle network. And that has a very important implications, because if a data provider can gain more customers, more data providers will come. More data providers that come, the greater the quality and the variety of data in various industries. And so, to sum it up, we separate the concerns. Node operators just retrieve the data, and institutional data providers supply the data, and the customers and the node operators can decide whether they want to allow this data provider to join. In that way, we can keep the quality high, and that's something for governance.
Thank you for answering that. Let's move on to other things that are not so uh, tough, to understand. And let's talk about the consensus mechanism, or the decision making process used by Goracle to like determine the validity of data provided to smart contracts. Now, I sort of made it specific. I know that, as you mentioned from the beginning, the Goracle can cater to cryptocurrency data, data from sports betting, from insurance, and all of that. But I kind of narrowed it down to Web3 or cryptocurrency, as we are investors in the space, and this is what we can understand. So can you explain the consensus mechanism, or the decision making process used by Goracle to determine the validity of data provided to smart contracts?
Yeah, absolutely. So uh, to explain the consensus mechanism, I'm sorry, but it's still very technical. So please bear with me here. And so,
Okay.
you know, so let's say there's 1,000 or 2,000 node operators. They don't all go get the data at the same time every block. That would be too much work, right? So what happens is a random group is selected to get the data. So maybe 50 to 100 node operators. And each of those node operators, a random amount is given to them. So for voting, so it's a pure proof of stake. So if I'm running a node, I stake, let's say, 100 GORA tokens, and I don't know when I'll be selected for a committee. And when I am selected for a committee, I get X number of votes, maximum 100 votes, but I could get as little as one vote. And then let's say the request is the price of Ethereum. We somebody proposes, says, "Hey, I got $1,800," and the rest of us vote, "Yes, I got the same value," or "No, I didn't get the same value." And we didn't really reinvent the wheel to come up with this consensus mechanism. This is actually uh, the consensus mechanism we took from Algorand. So, if for those who don't know too much about Algorand, it was created by a really smart guy called Silvio, who actually I think he's the inventor of zero knowledge proofs. He's but considered by a lot of people the father of cryptography. And a lot of the innovations in this space come from him. And so this consensus mechanism is able to do all of that within seconds before block time is over. And so that's kind of the consensus mechanism that's used for to make sure that the node operators are actually reporting correct data. And then this allows it so that we don't have to worry about limiting how many nodes can join the system. Anybody can join the system. We don't have to say check KYC to become a node operator, because the more node operators that join the system, it doesn't actually stress the system anymore. All it does is increase the capacity of the network. And that allows it to be really decentralized and permissionless. So it takes a lot of work off of our plate.
Right. I think that this next question, I think it's still talking about the product itself, which is the Goracle. Before we get to the aspect of the token, but I feel like we really really need to talk about this because the product is why the project is going to last. You know, so let me ask: Are there any specific requirements or dependencies for deploying and running Goracle within maybe like a blockchain ecosystem?
Right now, Goracle is launching on Algorand, so that's the main constraint. Is you have to be building an Algorand-based smart contracts. We do have a path to decentralization to multi-chain, where you can use the data on different chains. But right now, you know, if you're building on the Algorand network, which is one of the fastest, that's kind of where everything happens. And you know, I would say maybe 20 to 30% of projects out there need an Oracle. So it's a great, and I don't think Algorand has a sophisticated Oracle. There's a couple that do price feeds. But when you look at insurance data and pricing data, sports data, and even custom API endpoints, and anybody can start using Goracle today in testnet. Next week is going to be in mainnet. So really, there's no limitations. I guess you have to be a smart contract developer and you have to know how to write code. And for now, you have to know how to develop on Algorand. Does that does that answer your question, or was that
Yes, yes, yes,
okay?
yes. Sufficiently, honestly. Thank you. Right. So, what security measures does Goracle implement to protect against data manipulation, unauthorized access, and other potential vulnerabilities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And what a lot of proof of stake chains do is they implement something called slashing, right? But slashing is itself very hard to kind of prove that this person was acting badly. So you look at chains like Polkadot or Ethereum, most of the people that have been slashed on those chains were accidents. The network went down or something like that. And any sufficiently motivated attacker will get around slashing. That won't be a barrier to them. So the key is, how do you design a proper incentive mechanism that properly rewards somebody, and then also how do you make it as hard as possible for someone to attack the system. I talked earlier about the pure proof of stake, right? Where if you want to put a bad value for the price of Bitcoin, you don't know when you'll be selected to give the price of Bitcoin. And when you are selected, you won't know how much you're going to be able to influence the system to write that price, right? So it's really hard to attack the system just because it's so decentralized. Um, so you really have to get 60% or even more than that of the outstanding circulating tokens, and then you'll be pretty much picked for every round, and that's how you can attack the system. But the circulating supply is designed in a way where it makes that impossible for the first couple of years. You simply won't be able to do it, and the goal is after that to collect such a large amount of tokens, the price of every additional token goes up. So it increases exponentially. So by the time you acquire 60% of the circulating supply, you've spent more than you're ever standing to gain. And so that's kind of the security aspect. And then once you have the security down, then the next thing is incentives. You have to have enough people who are willing to run the nodes, because ultimately, if you don't have anybody running the nodes, then there's no point in using the Oracle. So um, the way we incentivize is, starting off, we have adoption incentives. A certain amount of tokens are allocated for guaranteed rewards. So if you are running a node, or if you're delegating your tokens to a node runner, for the first 6 months, you get kind of guaranteed ROI. But essentially, we're doing a ton of business development for every customer who's using the network. We need probably about 5 to 10 protocols consistently using Goracle for the network to break even, and everything after 10 uh, customers should generate profit. The fact that you can do off-chain computation should be a great way to earn revenue, and so the incentives come from the fees that are generated, the gas fees that are generated by the protocols.
Right. Next, are there any limitations or scalability considerations when using Goracle in especially like high demand scenarios or with large scale decentralized applications?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of the limitations come from the natural limitations of the blockchain, right? Right now, I think it's just over 3 seconds is as fast as you can get the data. You can't actually get a large amount of data on chain, so you can only get a few, kilobytes of worth of data on chain all at once. So some of these uh, things are going to be mitigated by having off-chain storage and off-chain computation, where you offload a lot of that heavy lifting onto the node network. But essentially, you know, blockchains are still somewhat limited by those limitations, and those are the types of limitation Goracle hopes to solve. Um, in the beginning, we have, I think it's about 1,000 or so node runners. So hopefully, there's going to be a lot of capacity to start, and we hope to be able to onboard enough customers to fill up that capacity.
Okay, one more question about the Goracle itself before we come to something simpler like the token. What are the costs associated with using Goracle? Like, is there like a pricing model or a fee structure in place for accessing and utilizing the Oracle services?
Yeah, so there's two types of things that a customer can pay for. So one is data. So if you're requesting data, you're going to pay the feed provider directly, and those are set by the feed providers. So some sports might be, $1,000 a month for sports data. So you're going to pay that to the data provider. And then there's the cost of accessing the network and accessing computation. So let's say, you want to run 2 plus 2 on the node network. I mean, you can do that on chain, but let's just say that you wanted to do that computation on the node network. You say, hey, do 2 plus 2 and give me the results. So that computation costs gas, and you pay for that gas, and the value is returned to you. So those are the two different costs. You know, data provide data is generally more expensive than computations. Um, and yeah, those are the two main going to be costs. And I guess in a way, those costs can be passed down to customers. So if you're a decentralized exchange, and uh, every swap has a bonding curve math that's too complex on chain, you do it off chain, and then maybe you pass those costs on to the customer. It's not going to be expensive, but then that comes off as gas fees.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. Now let's come to, the token itself. Because the truth is, whilst we have people who are interested in the product, we have lots of investors who just want us to get over these questions real fast and get to what they want to know, like funding. I mean, building something this good, right? I don't know. I have no experience or knowledge when it comes to data science or computer science or anything tech. But I just feel like it would have been, a little bit expensive. So the question in the mind of an investor, or the question from a perspective of an investor, would be, how were they able to fund this? Was there any kind of maybe private sale raise or seed sale raise, or VC backing or angel investor, all those kind of things. So how were you able to raise funds to develop all of this up until now?
Yeah, it was definitely not cheap, because Oracle problem is, some will say, it's still unsolved, and it's a very hard problem to solve. It requires a lot of, um, computer, like you said, computer engineering, cryptography, mathematics, and things like that. And so, we this whole thing started with a grant, actually, from the Algorand Foundation, and that allowed us to build the proof of concept. And when we started approaching customers with this product, it really resonated, and there was a lot of projects that needed this service. And essentially, we were able to get a seed funding from various VC partners like Borderless, Algorand, Big Brain Valhalla, and a few others. And that really allowed us to spend the last year and a half developing this software for the projects that will need it. And so now we're in a place where hopefully we're able to launch the product, we're able to onboard customers, and there's going to be some revenue generated by the protocol from onboarding customers.
All right. Now, next, I think I'll ask about another important part, and think that would be about partnerships and collaborations, because again, I honestly, I feel like I've said this too many times. I have zero knowledge when it comes to data and all of this, projects like this. So I am curious to know, if I'm going to invest in this as an investor, what are the partnerships or collaborations that are in place? With maybe other blockchain projects or Oracle providers, that will enhance the capabilities of Goracle.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, obviously there was the seed round investors, but more recently there were smaller retail type investors who bought the token. And there's the public sale tomorrow for people who buy the token. And generally, what these individuals would like to do is they take the GORA token and they run nodes with it. So they're technical enough to run nodes. And essentially, these tokens give you ownership, because when you're running nodes, if you're not technical, you delegate those tokens to a professional node runner, and they take maybe 5 or 10% commission. And as a node runner, what you're essentially doing is you're running the software that does the computations for people. You're running the software that fetches the off-chain data and puts it on chain. And as such, you're directly contributing to the growth of the network, to the functioning of the network. And then you benefit from getting the fees that are generated, the gas fees and a portion of the subscription fees. And in that sense, because it's a decentralized protocol, these node runners are like the backbone. They also get to participate in governance. So there's going to be DAO proposals. They decide, the future direction of the protocol. And so essentially, it becomes the network of the token holders. They get all the value from it, and the goal is that Goracle is not only able to service existing customers, but it's also able to open up new use cases that previously were not available. Some of these use cases include insurance, auctions, or sports fantasy applications, just to name a few. There's a lot of stuff being done with sensor data, getting sensor data off chain, on chain, so supply chain management. Um, and this by having this network that can allow these use cases to flourish. It's kind of like the chicken and egg. More people will come to build on Goracle and Algorand. Uh, more capacity and more node runners will join. That'll increase the amount of stuff the network can do, and the goal is that it generates more and more customers for the network.
Right. Still on the aspect of the token, how do I put this? Could you give us could you provide more information on the uh, maybe the Goracle tokenomics, including like its distribution, utility, and any mechanisms for incentivizing participation uh, or incentivizing mass adoption of the Goracle services?
Yeah, so the majority of tokens, over 40%, almost 50%, are reserved for ecosystem rewards, um, incentivizing node runners, bringing node runners on board. Also for applications that are going to build using Goracle that can generate fees and revenue for the protocol. And so the majority, or there's also tokens allocated specifically to marketing and helping the project grow, not just on Algorand blockchain, but also multi-chain. Um, and so, yeah, so the token is engineered in a way where value is really returned to helping the ecosystem grow. And that's essentially the goal here, is to try to get not just Goracle, but the blockchain in general to as close to a Web 2 world as possible, where a lot of the things that were not necessarily possible in Web 3 due to the limitations become possible. And then not only that, but you also have the decentralization aspect of it on top, which really the main differentiator between Web 3 and Web 2 is the decentralization and ownership. However, the differentiation people talk about is how you can't do the things on Web3 that you're used to doing. And so we want to narrow the gap of what can be done on Web3 so people can actually reap the benefits. And the token is really designed to bring about that outcome faster.
Okay. Now I want us to talk about marketing, but not just the traditional kind of marketing that is obtainable in the Web3 space. Because at the start of this session, you mentioned that the Goracle services is not just available to only cryptocurrency, like decentralized, yes, applications or projects or all of that is also available to um, Web 2, right? So the marketing I want us to talk about is, how do you intend to like what are your strategies for targeting uh, outside the Web3 space, outside the decentralized space, you know, to get them to use the Goracle services, apart from the marketing that you have planned in the crypto space, influencers, callers, AMA tools like this. How do you intend to target these ones that are outside of the Web3 space?
Yeah, so it's all about having the infrastructure and the data there and ready for them. So some examples are we're working with one organization who is has a traditional Web2 flight insurance business, and that flight insurance business works fairly well in the Web2 world, but they can reduce their customer service costs. They can reduce their claiming expenses, and the whole claim process can be made faster through decentralization. And so, for example, now instead of calling customer service agent, buying your insurance, if your flight is late, you have to file a claim. All you have to do is just buy your insurance, and if your flight is late, you just claim it through this automated smart contract, and there doesn't have to be any back end or anything like that. That's taken care of. And so that's an example of how a traditionally Web2 company can benefit from automation of a blockchain and the decentralization of a blockchain. Um, and so we had to have a lot of discussions with Web2 data providers for sports and weather and flight and things like that to say, hey, come provide your data onto the blockchain. So we're in one side, we're convincing the data providers who are from the Web2 world, and then on the other hand, we're making uh, the kind of we're making the basically the network a place where you can actually build these Web2 type software. So, maybe 4 years ago, that flight insurance would not be possible with the tools that were there at the time. But now, in the next, by the end of this year, you can have that. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is by making it available, the network and the computation and things like that.
All right. Thank you for answering that. I feel like I have taken up a lot of time asking questions upon questions, and I think at this point I will give the community members a chance to ask the question. We'll just take three or four questions, three actually, because you mentioned about the Algorand Foundation, and I don't know. I got wind that they're here. And honestly, I would like to call them up at the end of the session because I would like to give them an opportunity to say something and maybe ask one question, especially in regards to the Goracle project. So if you're ready, we can just take a couple questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, excited for that.
All right. So who do we have here? Okay, Blaze. Blaze. You can ask your question, Blaze. If you're here, please go ahead with your question. Blaze? Yeah. Okay. Twitter takes a while. But Blaze, can you hear me at all? Okay. Um, Jay, Blaze, that you? Blaze? Yeah. Hi. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Blaze? Okay. I think you might be having some issues on your end, but Jay, if you can hear me, Jay, you can go ahead with your questions.
Okay. Hi, Jenny. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Hi, Jay.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity. So I got a couple of
Sure.
questions for Goracle. So my first question is why do you guys actually believe Algorand as the best choice settlement layer for Goracle? And the data we can import, will it depend on the Algorand ecosystem, or what kind of data can we import over other chains using your protocol? Thanks.
Yeah, great question, Jay. I'll start with the second question first. The data we import is not tied to any chain. The data can be from any chain, or sorry, it can be from any source. So it's data agnostic, and really you can even call, if you have your own API endpoint, you can call your own API endpoint. You can also call data from other blockchains. So if you wanted to get Ethereum data, if you wanted to get Cosmos data on chain, again, it's just another data source. You can get that data on chain. And the reason we chose the Algorand blockchain is that, I mentioned earlier, we started off by building kind of a sports bet tracking application, and it really needed to be fast, instant finality. We needed the block times to be as short as possible. And I didn't know too much about Silvio at the time, but I realized, what the software Algorand did compared to a lot of the other chains that we researched fit our use case so perfectly. Um, and then Algorand is not necessarily a Turing complete language, and so what we were able to do was kind of make it fit our needs, and it was actually relatively easy to learn because there's a limited set of opcodes. As long as you kind of work within those parameters, you can get whatever you're trying to do up and running fairly quickly. Uh, Algorand also has a engineering team that is constantly putting out new features. So, you know, I talked about how we run our consensus mechanism. That consensus mechanism has to be verified on chain. Algorand is one of the only chains that allows you with their VRF verify opcode to verify some of that stuff on chain. There's box storage, which allows you to store unlimited data, which is extremely important for our network to store not just the data that's imported, but also the votes on chain. And so, we're extremely happy that we started off with this ecosystem. And yeah, that's kind of answers why we chose it.
All right. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Jay. All right. Let's see. Bard,
All
are
right.
you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Thanks, Jenny, and been a very informative one. So my question to Goracle is, why do I have to verify my identity before I could participate in the IDO? And also, I want to know um the challenges you're facing currently in the project, and what are you doing in order to fix these challenges? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, the IDO is a chance for people who want to participate in the network by running nodes and things like that to kind of get their token early at a set price. Um, if we allowed anybody to participate, it could come off as selling a security, because if Americans participate, we're under the jurisdiction of that jurisdiction, right? And then that would open us up. And you might think, oh, it's such a small protocol, right? But we have seen Library, which is another small, relatively small project, get hit with a lawsuit by the SEC. There are places like China which, they do not allow certain things, so we will not be able to allow them to be a part of it. And really, for people in those kind of parts of the world, maybe they participate on decentralized exchanges or something like that. But essentially, we just want to make sure that we are compliant as an organization, and we're not personally or organizationally held liable for kind of not following the rules in a country when we're not necessarily. part of that country or we don't operate in that country. So that's the main reason for that. And sorry, I think you had a second question there.
Yeah, my second question challenges that the Goracle team are currently facing in the project, maybe in UI, UX, or in your marketing, and what they're doing in order to fix these challenges.
Yeah, the real challenge is the Oracle problem, right? Making sure you can keep the data secure, making sure the token distribution is uh, equitable and it doesn't fall into the hands of attackers. So a lot of that was designing the token, um, making sure the network is decentralized enough that the node operators. So a lot of the challenges were more technical. Obviously there's going to be marketing challenges. I think any decentralized community, which really depends on the people who are running the nodes, you have to kind of convince them that this is theirs and the marketing has to be there for a certain number of people to continually participate. Just like open source software has to has its own maintainers and contributors, we have to have a kind of a set number and convince them that, hey, you want to contribute and maintain this project over the long term. So yeah, marketing is always going to be a somewhat of a challenge.
All right. Thanks for the great answer.
Yeah, no worries. I know you asked how we're solving it. So, I mean, the technical side, it's very straightforward how we're solving that. We've got a really great team of engineers. But in terms of the marketing, we did this thing called incentivized testnet, where people were able to test the software and in return, they get rewards or free tokens that they can use to run nodes or participate in governance. And really, we were, a lot of people think these testers were extremely crucial because they were able to help us stress test the system. We had almost 10,000 people running a node, and we learned a lot about when there's that much load on the system, what are the weak points. So at first we were using, third-party RPC endpoints, and we realized everybody has to run their own Algorand node for the ecosystem to be able to handle that and not to have a centralized point. So our testers really helped a lot, and the incentivized testnet is ongoing. So if anybody's interested, they can go to our website goracle.io, launch the app, and register for that. It's going to be ongoing for quite some time.
Thank you, Panther, for that question. And we will take the last question from Burning Ones. Burning Ones. Can you hear me? Please go ahead with the question real quick.
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you so much. All right, I've been following this project from the start. Now, I wanted to know now, in regards to staking the Coral tokens, is there like a step-by-step guide on how to stake rightly? And then, why will it capture the value of the Coral ecosystem?
Yeah, great question, Burning. Uh, there is a guide on how to. So when you say staking, there's a couple things you can do. You can either run a node, which means you uh, download the software, stake the tokens, and let the software run. If you're not that technical, you can delegate those tokens to somebody else who's running a node, and it's non-custodial, so they don't actually take hold of it. You can withdraw it at any time. So there's those two methods. So if running a node is technical, but we've had people who are not technical at all run a node. So you can do that, but of course, it might just be easier to delegate those tokens. And there's very detailed instructions and a lot of guides created by our community members. I would say jump in our Telegram or our Discord and just ask for those resources. And we've got a super helpful group of people who will direct you to where you need to go.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I have one more question. More like, should I go on?
Make it really quick, like really, really quick.
Okay. Now, I checked the site earlier, and it was talking about the Goral economics uh, being designed using a framework that aggregates the tokenomics into three categories, which is the market design, the mechanism design, and the token design. Is it possible for you to make more explanation on the mechanism design?
Yeah, absolutely. So the market design is how you design the market, right? The different participants. The token design is the actual token property rights it gives you. The mechanism is the actual technology behind it. So one, the smart contracts and how they work and what can and cannot happen. And of course, the non-technical mechanisms as well. So governance and the voting protocols and things like that. And so if you go to docs.goracle.io and you click on the economic design document, there is a very long, almost 50-page document that goes very, very deep into that whole that how we designed it. And so it's if you're into that kind of stuff, it's a very interesting read, I think. So check it out. That page that you were just talking about, if you go a bit lower, there's a link that you can click on there.
Thank you, Bunny Ones, for the great question. Now, I said that we would like to, call up the Algorand Foundation if they're here, so that maybe like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, would like to hear them if they have anything they'd like to say. And personally, I know that I have a question that I would like to ask, especially, regarding the Goracle project. So I don't know if they're here with us or right now. Um. Oh well. Um. Can you confirm if they're here?
Uh, I see Fred. Maybe he's working. I don't know. But I'm not sure if they're here to
Okay.
speak. Maybe just to listen.
Okay. Okay. That's okay. All right. So I think that we've covered more or less, everything. Mm. But if there's anything that you would, like to touch on, especially like before we end the VC end the session rather, please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm just looking at all the comments that people ask. Some great questions, and it's unfortunate we're not going to get the time to go through all of them. I do see one here by David Kim. He's a great community member, and he's asking, what will be the next change in the roadmap beside Algorand? And we want to increase the value of the network. Once we have that, with all the capacity that we have, we want to onboard, chains like Cosmos, which doesn't have too many oracles themselves, chains like Polygon, Arbitrum. And so our roadmap is going to be full, and every time we move to a new chain, we're able to now integrate those two chains together. So right now, you can import data from any chain to Algorand, but you cannot export data. So if we develop the smart contracts on Cosmos or Polygon, then you can export data to those chains, and now you can build cross-chain applications on all of these chains. So if that answers your question, David, will Cosmos and EVM based chains are the immediate next steps, and we'll see where we go from there. In general, we really appreciate you having us on. Tomorrow is our public sale for anybody who wants to, be able to run a node, get tokens to participate in governance, or even just delegate that and help kind of grow the system and increase our capacity so we can continue to do those, bring on more customers. Tomorrow is a great chance to get those tokens. But yeah, I think that's everything from me.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on today's session. Honestly, I think it was informative in a very down to earth manner, in a way that we could understand it. And for that, I am really, really grateful. So, yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye. And to everyone who participated, thank you so much for your questions. And for those whose questions we could not take, well, you could join the community. In fact, make sure to join the community and follow them on Twitter. It's very important, for you to be in the community because that way you'll be able to get first-hand information, and also you will not be open to scammers attacking you or sending you admins DMing you. So lastly, I would like to say that no matter how excited we are about any project, as I always say, none of what we do here is financial advice, and you have the responsibility of doing your research extensively about every project that we present here, right? So thank you guys for joining us, and see you in our next session in the next, let's see, 1 hour, 4 minutes. Bye.